And we're off. It is 9:01 a.m. U.S. Pacific Daylight Time here in Los Angeles. Wednesday, May 5th, the year of our Lord, 2021. And I have a nice song for you. This song is called The Lord's Prayer by, yes, it is still Psalters week. Psalters, Psalters. I think it's from the same root word as the Psalms. Psalms, I do believe. You know, the book in the Bible, the middle of the Bible. Open up in the middle, you find the Psalms. So enjoy this hoopin' and hollerin' prayer, the Lord's Prayer, but they turned it into a hoopin' and hollerin' prayer, and it's about 7 minutes long, so I want to start it right away. Enjoy, and we will be talking. Yes. Sure. And I think that this is Hebrew. Can you hear it? Very nice. Beautiful. But then it turns into English. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Lord, not you people. Hebrew. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Sounds like a bad American Idol audition. Wow. Shameless. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts. Interesting taste in music, says Aurora Rose. Thank you, Aurora. As we forgive all those who are indebted to us. That's right. My ears are hurting right now, says Jeff Casey. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Curry music, says Raymond 11. Happy Cinco de Mayo. De Mayo. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Love the words, though. Thank you, Jeff Casey. So all of a sudden, I want curry. Yes, it does seem a little ethnic. A little ethnic. I wonder what some little ethnic child thinks of this song. The 5th of May in Spanish, it's a holiday. Yes, Cinco de Mayo. It's a holiday, it's an American holiday by Mexicans. Segregation. But anyway. This gets really hooping and hollering, guys. Sounds weird, says Trump Support 2021. Sounds like Allahu Akbar. So guys, you can call in 888-775-3773. That's the call-in line. I will be talking about people whose debts have not been forgiven. Chauvin, Derek Chauvin, the former officer from Minneapolis. The blacks were not wanting to forgive Derek Chauvin. They want revenge for him. Maybe even just doing his job. They've fallen to temptation to hate the white man, to hate the cops. Hake always got the beta music, says RD Pro. Yeah. This is Psalters. It came out in like, I don't know, the year 2000, give or take a few years. Nomadic singers. And I told you guys about that black juror. That black juror who's all a black activist juror. That was almost a week ago that I told you guys about that guy. See, the song is getting faster. That railroaded white cop and the black activist juror I told you about last week, last Thursday, April 29th. Brandon Mitchell, the black 31-year-old high school basketball coach. I'm going to reiterate about him because I was on top of this before all the headlines talked about, oh, wait a minute. He was active. He was an activist. He wants to spark change by being a juror. This song is lit. Fire. Litty. Thank you, Made by Denim. Sounds Eastern European. Thank you, Matt, living the dream. Hake got the worst taste in music. Secular music is the MVP of beta music. See, is this or is this not hooping and hollering music? I've heard worse, says Derek. Thank you. Big bump. Drums from Africa right now. And I will be talking about the rhinos. There's rhinos versus rhinos. It is endless. It is endless. Liz Cheney, they're going after Liz Cheney. Because Liz Cheney hates Trump and Trump is loved by the people. But the rhinos, is this Kalinka? What's Kalinka? Forever. And then they just start chanting, Amen, 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 Amen again, Amen. It feels kind of black churchy or something. Or African. Doesn't it sound African? What a mess. But the rhinos are trying to take out. The rhinos are trying to take out the people, the fellow rhinos. And I'm not really falling for it. By the way, Trump started a new thing. He started a new social media platform, if you will. That was the headline, but it's only him posting. It's only him posting. You cannot reply. I don't even think that the like button works. But you can share it to Facebook and Twitter, and I'm happy to see it because we're seeing what Trump is saying in real time. That's cool. We're almost done with this beautiful music, guys. Almost done. And lastly, but not leastly, the 3/5 compromise was all about power, not this imaginary racism thing. Give me a break. So all of you, oh, I was only 3/5 of a human. We were only 3/5 of the human. Not as if you were even alive back then. That's just melodrama. You're pathetic. It was just about political power. A disagreement between white gentlemen that does not concern you. Thank you. So guys, it is about time. It's 9:08 a.m. here in Los Angeles. Let's get right on. Hake needs an exorcism. Drive the bad music away. With the show.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la.
Hey guys!
Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la.
So, how are you all doing? I am fine. They say, Peter R. says, garbage. Hey, more B-side Fleetwood Mac, says Jim Justice. Yeah, Fleetwood Mac used those weird instruments too. Tim Wheeler says, come on, Hake, at least go back to metal. This music is explosive. Fire, says Marcus Jones Stink. Pathetic, says Penny Rue. Whoa. Skips dogs going nuts. Big brother Hake, this music would sound better on mute. Joshua Everything. There is an epic European Christian chant that answers this week's biblical question called Evlogitaria of the Dead. And I probably butchered that pronunciation. Thank you, guys. I have more where that came from. But Derek Chauvin, let's get right to this justice thing. Or injustice is really what it is. And it is Cinco de Mayo. From what I understand, that's an American holiday. An American anti-American holiday. Is it? Is it anti-American? Because it's not even considered a Mexican holiday, is it? Or that big of a Mexican holiday? It's bigger in America than it is in Mexico because so many of the Mexicans are here in America. From what I understand, they're like 60% of the Hispanics in this country. Something like that. And maybe even 60% of the illegals. I could be wrong on that. Maybe that's the the percentage of illegals who are Latino. But I think that it's the Mexicans. Because people say, oh, it's not just Mexicans, it's Central and South Americans, and it's also Asians, and it's also Canadians. Give me a break. Some little ethnic child, by the way, gave a super chat and said, thank you for playing the song of my people. You're welcome, some little ethnic child. Beautiful music. I like it. Yeah, it's not American at all, says Matt Living the Dream. Thank you. Based AF, Based America First says, happy sandwich, no mayo. That's right, I agree. That's why I prefer it to be called Cinco de Mayo, because mayo is disgusting. Mayonnaise, it's gross. So Derek Chauvin, former officer Derek Chauvin, I told you he was railroaded. We all knew that he would be, honestly. We've been talking about how the jurors of today are more and more and more and more corrupt, influenced by corruption, not fair-minded, not based in reality. And the corrupt mainstream media convicts people in the so-called court of public opinion, and they pretend that that's a valid thing. The injustice-minded people pretend that that's a good thing, that we can judge them in the court of public opinion, and that, therefore, the mob gets its nasty revenge against innocent men and women and people. Derek Chauvin's attorney is Eric Nelson, defense attorney. He filed this request for a new trial, a motion for a new trial. You just don't understand mayonnaise, James. Gross. You can trick me if you turn it into aioli. If you season it the right way, you can trick me into liking it. But he filed a request in the interest of justice, and because of an abuse of discretion, deprived Derek Chauvin of a fair trial, his constitutional right? Chauvin's trial was tainted by prosecutorial and jury misconduct. And I told you about this black juror, the first one who doxed himself, because the judge said, you guys can expose yourselves, but other people cannot expose you without your permission. And he said there were errors of law at trial and the verdict was contrary to law. He was so-called convicted last month, you know that. Just a few weeks ago, it seems like, or less. In the passing of Georgia, Florida. They call it the murder of George Floyd. Give me a break. Who stopped breathing while he was pinned by Chauvin and a couple of other cops. After having resisted arrest. After having tried to pass a fake 20 twice at a store. A liquor store, maybe. The jury falsely convicted him. I think it was false. Presumed innocent unless proven guilty, and he hasn't been proven guilty. Since the court of public opinion is so valid, my opinion is quite valid. Second-degree murder, third-degree murder, nope. Second-degree manslaughter, nope. It's what happens. It's what happens sometimes. Nelson alleged that a number of issues affected the trial, including refusal to move the trial over concerns of a tainted jury pool. They had how many blacks and how many women on this jury? Or failing to sequester the jury? You know how I had said, oh, Peter Cahill, he seems like an okay judge. This Judge Peter Cahill is supposedly a white guy. He might even be a Democrat, I'm not sure. But Nelson says that he abused his discretion when he rejected the separate motion for a new trial over concerns about the publicity. Because a whole lot of bad publicity. And these whole riots and movements and protests and all that stuff went out of control. The lynch mob went nuts, including so-called conservatives. Nice conservatives, whom I like, were crying murder without knowing. Even with knowing some of the mitigating factors of what was going on, that this guy was tripping out on drugs. That was clear even from the video, honestly, that he was tripping out. quite obvious. But they were still calling it, they were still calling murder. I wonder what those people are thinking now. Man, what injustice, right? Publicity here was so pervasive and so prejudiced against the white cop before and during the trial that it amounted to a structural defect in the proceedings. I agree with Nelson on this. Mostly I don't like lawyers, but this guy, he's right here. Other issues like Judge Cahill's jury instructions. Supposedly, Nelson says they failed to accurately reflect the law with respect to second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and unauthorized use of force. Was it unauthorized? Not for so long. Where does it say that? Nelson alleged that the prosecutors committed misconduct, including disparaging the defense, improper vouching, and failing to adequately prepare its witnesses. And the sleazy attorney general, I played for you that clip of this on 60 Minutes from a couple of Sundays ago, I want to say. At least 2 Sundays ago. Of, what's that guy's name? Keith Ellison. Sleazy, light-skinned, black, so-called Antifa Muslim, swear the oath of office on a Quran, which says you can lie to the infidel in order to gain favor until you can strike. And he's striking. That guy lied on 60 Minutes by saying, I don't want it to be overly harsh or overly soft, the punishment for Chauvin after the conviction, right? The conviction took place maybe 2.5 weeks ago or so. And this guy went on 60 Minutes. CBS News is 60 Minutes. And they're just a liberal propaganda outlet, anti-white, anti-American, anti-nationalist, globalist, socialist. That's 60 Minutes now. They're just a disgrace now. They used to be more interesting. They're still interesting, but interesting how evil they are. And they let this guy go on and say, we just want it to be accurate. We don't want to send a message. Of course they want to send a message. And of course they want revenge against this guy. The white cop murdering a black victim. And what they said about this guy, the prosecutors want an excessive higher sentence on Chauvin due to so-called aggravating factors. They said, Floyd is a particularly vulnerable victim. Excuse me, what? 46-year-old, 6-foot-something, big black dude, able to resist arrest with 4 cops on him, or 4 cops trying to handle him, with kid gloves, honestly. They handled him with kid gloves for the most part. And then he's like, they put him in the vehicle. If he had calmed down, had he not been on tripping out on those drugs, maybe he would not have had a problem being claustrophobic inside the back of a car, which, in my opinion, the back of a car is a little bit roomier than the front of the car, the driver's side front of the car that he was in. Were the keys in the ignition, by the way? Was he technically DUIing? Because he was tripping on drugs. Clearly tripping on drugs. But he was in the driver's side of this vehicle. And I think that there was a drug dealer in there with him who refused to testify. Where are the charges against that guy? I wonder. But he was a particularly vulnerable victim. Excuse me. He was not a vulnerable victim. He was vulnerable by his own hands, and he was victimized by himself, not by the cops. Treated with particular cruelty. No, he was not. They called the ambulance. They sat on him because they didn't want him resisting arrest, which he had done for several minutes prior, right? They said Chauvin abused his authority and committed the quote-unquote crime as part of a group of 2 or 3 or more persons, and multiple children were present when the supposed crime was committed. So those are aggravating factors for which they want a harsher sentence. Keith Ellison had just gotten through saying 2 weeks ago on 60 Minutes, we want it to fit the crime. This fake crime. It's a fake crime. So that guy's a liar. And by the way, he does support Antifa. And he hates Trump. A Trump hater, an America hater. So typical commie. you know what else happened? He asked the court to order a hearing to impeach the verdict on the grounds that the jury committed misconduct, felt threatened or intimidated, felt race-based pressure during the proceedings, which is absolutely true. Listen to that. Did you hear that, black juror? Of course he did. He was committing race-based pressure and probably felt race-based pressure, that 31-year-old immature relationships and dating podcast host, cringy black basketball coach from Minneapolis, that Mitchell guy, Brandon Mitchell. I have a picture of him that I put in. It's from HN 210429, blah, 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 hour 1, hour 2, maybe. This guy, well, I edited it, but that's from Photoshop a little bit. It's a little bit Photoshopped, you can tell. But that's the picture of this guy, looking all smug. Would you want him on the jury if you were a former white cop who kneeled on the neck of a shoulder blade of a black guy who got cast as a victim in major worldwide protests? No, I wouldn't want him. I think he should be scratched from the jury. But no, he spoke right up shamelessly. This guy, crazy. And I told you about him last Thursday. Scott Pelley, by the way, was ridiculous over on 60 Minutes. But he revealed himself, and he got up on this black show with Erica Campbell. Get Up Mornings with Erica Campbell podcast. And it took 8 hours of deliberation because one guy wanted to be actually fair, was concerned about different details. And this Mitchell guy, who I showed you, said, it should have lasted 20 minutes to falsely convict Minneapolis Police Department veteran officer Derek Chauvin, who started, I think, in 2001. And he only had a handful of complaints against him. Not many for a city that is that out of control, to be honest. Minneapolis is also known as Murderapolis, I believe, right? And that's called that because there's a lot of blacks committing murders and being victimized by murders, but they want to blame the cops. It's ridiculous. And by the way, Mitchell said of Chauvin, as the case went on, his demeanor kind of changed to more of a confused look, as this isn't how it's supposed to go. I didn't see any remorse. What do you expect this guy to show remorse for something when he doesn't feel that he did anything wrong? What a fake juror. Fake justice. These people aren't not justice-minded. He's in isolation right now. He was struck by the testimony of Floyd's brother, Philonise, Philonise. Floyd took the stand and told jurors about the childhood together with George. Why is that even relevant? That's just feel-good, emotional stuff to make it act like, this is juror number 52, right? To make it seem like, he's an especially vulnerable victim. And he was asked, and you heard the clip on the Jesse Lee Peterson show. They played it just in the third hour here. Asked by Erica Campbell if he had a message to people about accepting jury duty. This juror, I think he's juror number 52, Brandon Mitchell, he said it's important. If we want to see some change and we want to see things going differently, we got to get out there and get in these avenues, in these rooms, and try to spark some change. I told you about that last Thursday, and barely now we're a week later, almost, we're hearing headlines about it. But honestly, I've been telling you before that jurors in general are not trustworthy people. And especially black jurors. They want to say, white juries, that's not good. Excuse me, black juries? I don't think so. You hear about it so frequently. They have the bias in favor of black criminals and against cops and whites. Anyway, that's that for that. let me get to Kraig in Illinois. He wants to comment on this ridiculous black juror. Kraig, how are you doing? It's good to hear from you.
Hey, what's going on, Hake? How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine.
Hey, I promise I won't curse today, all right?
Nice.
I'm sorry. Okay, man, I was looking at the headlines about this, and they should have took that case out of that venue.
Yeah.
It all happened at. And these guys, you know, they lied, which I think something should be where they should be held, like in the words of LeClown James, should be held accountability for what they're doing.
Yeah.
They lied on the sheet there, because you have to fill out a form as a juror, and if you're not telling the truth and you lied, you should be held in contempt of court.
Yeah.
So there should be something done about that, but I guarantee that he may get away with that.
Yeah, I don't really have high hopes that this hearing or finding conviction will get thrown out. But
Yeah,
I'm glad that he's at least fighting it.
Yeah,
It gives us more opportunity to speak up on his behalf, because it's ridiculous. It's shameful that they're doing this injustice against what I consider to be an innocent man. I have not been convinced that he did any crime.
You are absolutely right, and I agree with you 200%. I agree that he did nothing wrong. Those drugs contribute to his death.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
His knee was not on the neck, but you know that's what the liberal headlines are and the media are saying, the knee on the neck.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. The guy you had on the show yesterday, I couldn't take it talking with him anymore, because, you know, he called himself a conservative or whatever.
Oh, you're talking about the guy from last, it might have been last Wednesday or so.
Last Wednesday, yeah. Man. He need to take off that American flag hat and put that African flag on his hat.
Yeah.
Because he sure ain't American.
No, he's
You know?
not. He believes in racism. That's the typical black conservative that you see on Twitter. They all believe in the racism thing, and they think that whites are the primary perpetrators and blacks are the primary victims.
Yeah, and it's not true, okay?
Yeah.
And not only that, but you know what? Caucasians, you guys got civil rights too. I mean, use it. I mean, seriously, if blacks are bullying y'all, you have the right to stand up for yourself.
Right.
And you have civil rights as well. I'm so sick of this bull crap with all this stuff about the division and black people this and that. You know what? Mr. Peterson said it earlier today. Blacks are out for destruction, and look what they did to Derek Chauvin. Okay, that was totally wrong what they did. And you're looking at all these people in their occupations, because you know most nurses that work in the medical field are very liberal.
Yeah, very true.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that.
You got the psychiatrists, the social workers, they're very liberal too as well. So they were very biased against him because of his occupation, or maybe some of them were probably married to cops and they couldn't stand him, and that's why they used their personal feelings instead of based on facts against Derek Chauvin. That was wrong.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. The whole medical so-called field is extremely corrupt. You have doctors like putting out positions on the Second Amendment. Oh, we've treated gunshot wounds. We need guns banned. It's ridiculous. They're evil, and they push people to get the flu shots like crazy, more so today than even 10, 12, 15 years ago. And it's not based in science. It's based in control freak fear.
Yeah.
It's not based in wisdom.
They get you with that. They get you with that, try to control you. Well, why don't they ban this vaccine? Because I'm not an advocate of this vaccine. And, ever since this pandemic happened, I thought they were working on getting a vaccine to find a cure for it, which there were doctors that were saying that there is a cure for it, but they want to push something, because Dr. Fauci. What I found out about Dr. Fauci, this is off the subject here, but I heard he is an ophthalmologist. He's not like a medicine doctor or intern medicine doctor.
I think that may be the case. He's some type of let's see, an American scientist and immunologist, whatever that means. And he's been in the government for decades. and he's supposedly the highest paid guy, and he doesn't. He at least seems pretty healthy himself for being born in 1940. It's 21. He's 81 years old, almost 81 years old now. He's healthy for 80, and I respect him for that, but for nothing else. His views, he's a fan of Hillary Clinton and her "What difference does it make?" Speech. Yeah. He's a fan of that lesbian woman from MSLSD. I'm blanking on her name, but she's dumb. And he's a big-time fan of hers. Yeah, Maddow, Rachel Maddow. And you're right. I think that people say that he contributed to problems with HIV/AIDS stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot of people died because of something that he did, is what people say. I don't know much about that part. But he was in with the deep state. George W. Bush, he was in with him. A sleaze, anti-Trump guy, pro-Biden guy, pro-Hillary guy. Not an honest person.
No, not at all. Neither one of them are honest, and I just can't stand the fact that every time I hear something or see something about the border, and these people coming in here like, okay, y'all gonna take care of us. It's whatever Biden says, we gonna do it. You know, it's like, what? I mean, come on, you got to work just like everybody else, but do it the right way. Right. You know, don't just come up here and think that you're just gonna get free things.
I know.
I mean, we got people that's homeless. Yeah. That they don't have nothing, and you guys get first come, first serve.
They're getting special treatment. They're getting extra special
treatment at that.
For sure. Yeah.
Man, it just ticks me off, man. But look, I ain't gonna hold you up long because I know there's some other callers that want to call in, man.
I appreciate it, Kraig. Good to hear from you, man.
Well, good talking. Hey, man, keep playing your music. Tell them to stop hating, okay?
All right. Hope you enjoy it.
All right. Okay, brother.
All right. Take care. Thank you, Kraig. Somebody says he's a trained Marxist. Are you referring to Fauci, jobless boy? Are you saying Fauci is a trained Marxist? Might as well be. He's served the American public health sector in various capacities for more than 50 years. An advisor to every U.S. president since Ronald Reagan. That's too long. He's decrepit, even if he's looking all right for 80. Is that adrenochrome? Is that from... Never mind. From what I understand, adrenochrome is baby stuff, right? They take it from baby blood? Where does this guy stand on abortion? Probably for it. Just shows you 80-year-olds are sleaze, can be sleazed as well. One thing Fauci is not, he is a scientist. He's a political sock puppet, says Doom Jesus. I agree. Fauci, give me a break. And there's a lot of mess going on with the communist shutdowns. People don't want to work, all kinds of stuff going on. But anyway, I want to tell you about some Washington Compost headlines. I don't think I have any pictures or anything to show you from these. The Pentagon wants to make it take a harder line on domestic extremism, is their line, right? The Pentagon, that's the Department of Defense, and they are anti-white. You know, Tucker had a great segment. He was covering that case of that poser CIA mother lady. I don't want to say single mother because I don't know if she's married or not. She didn't really get into it. She didn't dox herself. But that Latina with the communist fist on her girl power, Mija, you are worth it t-shirt, walking through the CIA building that's propping her up with words on the walls like confidence, courage. I don't know if confidence was one. Courage, leadership, fair, which is everything that she's not, right? And by the way, people made the point that where is her love of the country? Where is any mention of the country and the good of the country with regard to this CIA stuff? Has the CIA ever been good? I don't know. But I think it's worse now than ever. That's my suspicion. If they're putting this mess out, kissing up But as Tucker made a great point, maybe she's just a spy into this ridiculous world. And maybe she's actually pro-America and pro-white. And she's just playing a role. Could be. It could be. I kind of doubt it. But I don't know. You know, the former CIA director, Tucker pointed out, Tucker Carlson, right? This guy on Fox News. I would vote for him if he were to run for president, but I don't see it happening. He pointed out that John Brennan, I think is the guy's name, the former CIA director, is talking about, white supremacists and libertarians and all these different groups, nationalists and fascists and all these people. They are a threat to the country. Something like that. And they're developing a movement. And I guess that's the reason for Facebook justifying its ban that they said was unjustified on President Trump and Twitter. Because they are anti-American just as the CIA people are. Bunch of dumb liberals. And foreigners at that, by the way, just a side note. But there's some domestic enemies as well. Globalists, too. Legal experts say the Pentagon could face legal challenges if it expands rules that now permit passive membership in so-called extremist groups. But what are they calling extremist groups? Just regular Christians? Many regular Christians. There's a regular Christian young man who's not on a no-fly list. You heard about that? I mentioned it. I've mentioned it briefly a couple of times. On a TSA no-fly list. And some of the more independent-minded people on both the left and the right, some of them kind of anti-American, were sounding the alarm about this violation of rights stuff with the war on terror. And many of you guys were too, actually. Talking about George W. Bush and the Patriot Act and all that stuff is evil, and it's going to come back on you. Because there was one case of where this Muslim guy couldn't fly, and he was not suspected of anything. He just wanted to go see his mother or something like that. But he couldn't fly. This was years ago. And now there's just regular Christian, white Hispanic, 2% black maybe, 2% African. Christian guys who can't fly because they're famous and popular and effective. If you're effective, they take you down bad. Luckily, I'm flying under the radar. But I'm restricted a bit. But you don't have rights. Trump, no rights. Nick Fuentes, no rights. All these guys. It's ridiculous. And so, they want to go after gangs and stuff, but now they're calling regular Christians extremists. And partly because of the stance on LGBTIQ issues. It's shameful. And they want to call that domestic extremism. Wow. The secularists, the anti-Christians, the anti-Americans, it's a violation of due process and an attack against the First Amendment, says Based America First. Very true. But that's white thinking. By white thinking, I mean fair-minded. Based America First. You can't be fair-minded. What are you, white? A white domestic extremist? You believe in the Constitution? All these people, it's not 3%ers. Is it 3%ers? Whoever, the Oath Keepers. The Oath Keepers, they wanted to uphold their oath to keep the Constitution, right? To protect and defend the Constitution. That's what they swore to. Protect and defend the Constitution, not the criminals. Serve and protect. 3%ers is a group as well, yeah. But that's extreme. That's ridiculous. I remember arguing with a friend of mine before he cut me off. Talking about, stuff that's basic to the Constitution. He's like, you're talking about the Constitution. And he wants to throw it away. Some dumb liberal UCLA so-called educated, miseducated, brainwashed. pro-gay, anti-Christian, anti-white, racism-believing Asian guy. Nice guy, but brainwashed. And they're going after Ron DeSantis, too, by the way. He's not only on our radar, because I think of Ron DeSantis as being one of the guys who's at least making a show of fighting for what's right, which I appreciate. I'm not holding back from that. We'll see him as he gets tested. The tests will come, and we'll see how he does under pressure. He's doing pretty well so far under quite a bit of pressure. President Trump did quite well under pressure. DeSantis seems to be doing that as well. I like that. Democrats are preparing for an all-in fight in Florida against rising GOP star Ron DeSantis, who's actually looking out for the people in Florida. Nice. Is it going far enough? I don't know. But he's gone further than any other governor in terms of protecting people from this vaccine passport idea. Because vaccine passports, these lame governors, fake Republican rhino governors, and you hear about them. There's like a whole list of them. Kristi Noem, maybe Doug Ducey in Arizona, I'm not sure, and some others. There's this guy in Tennessee, I think, goofy-looking, boyish guy who hates Trump, I think, if I remember right. White guy, I think. Are acting like, oh, we're not going to have vaccine passports where the government forces you to get a vaccine in order to do this or that. But they're letting the private businesses do it. Not so much, at least, with Ron DeSantis. He doesn't even want private businesses doing that to we the people, or to you, the Floridians, I guess I'll say it. I prefer Floridans. I probably sound like an idiot to all of you guys who are used to hearing Floridians. Correct. Anyway, the Washington Compost, though, is so biased against Trump, Republicans, America, Christians, whites. It's shameful. And really, I mean, they're for self-destruction of blacks, gays, women. Because if you think about it, what the women's movement is self-destruction of women and their children and the men that they think that they care about. It's self-destruction. Oh, get a job and get your career so you don't have kids, and then you're miserable when it's too late to have kids, and then kill your babies and kill your conscience and kill the men's child. What a mess. Somebody ban this person. Hold on. I had to block somebody on Trovo. Block all blanks must blank. I have enough mods there, right? Oh, Shaggy beat. Oh, he banned. Okay, thank you, Shaggy. Shaggy boy. Very on it. Shout out, man. By the way, how is Skip doing as a moderator? I bet he's doing quite well. But anyway, Black Lives Matter, another self-destructive group. Self-destruction. Propping up black criminals who resist arrest, making them heroes, encouraging other blacks to get attitude and resistance and fighting and aggression towards cops and whites and everybody else. Making themselves enemies of everybody. And going crazy. Going crazy. Those are enemies of their own. I say it all the time that it gets people triggered when I talk about how the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, doesn't make people triggered, but it gets people on a mess. The ADL are enemies of everybody, really, including the Jewish people that they're trying to protect from defamation. Because, well, they're pretending to protect from defamation. Because they are self-professed enemies of the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and other stuff like that. They hate white people, Christians, anybody who tells the truth. They smear them. They are pro-defamation. Same thing with the LGBTQ stuff. What can be more anti-yourself than self-destruction by way of LGBTQIA stuff? That's self-destruction, a self-destructive life choice, lifestyle, life position, mentality to have. But you get stuck into it. So that's what Washington Compost supports. Strong, and then they come up with this stuff. Strong men who got cozy with Trump get the cold shoulder from Joe Biden, pretending that Joe Biden is tough and that that Trump was strong. Too weak. Russia's Putin and China's Xi Jinping get tougher treatment from Biden, while many of the former president's favorites just get ignored, says Ann Gearin, who is a Washington Compost writer. Excuse me, Trump knows how to treat people, how to make deals, how to bring peace into the world. Biden is erratic and likes to get into these sleazy wars and conflicts and mess, just like the rest of the states, because they're not men. Biden administration starts to unwind Trump's border legacy. Here's another headline from the Washington Compost. Administration officials are touting an end to an era of crude nationalism. Excuse me, crude nationalism? That's from the Washington Compost. They're using the term crude nationalism. And a more sober approach to border security. Excuse me, a sober approach to border security? That's not a sober approach to border security, what he's doing. He's bringing FEMA in while pretending that it's not a crisis, pretending that he has it under control, increasing by, triple or so the number of refugees that we let into the country, because Trump brought it down to 15,000, which is still too many in my opinion. But he brought it back up, Biden did, to 62,500. That's not sober. That's out of control. And he let these people in. He's letting these people in just as sleazy Obama did. This is Obama all over again. Obama! I remember hearing Barack Obama having border agents 40 miles from the border so that the unaccompanied alien children could come on right in. Same thing I hear from people in Texas, including Owen Schroyer of InfoWars, who has Jesse Lee Peterson on his show sometimes. Owen Schroyer says the border agents are 40 miles from the border, and they're stopping people like him. They're stopping vans full of whites. They're stopping InfoWars trucks. Meanwhile, the illegals are just streaming on through. I think it's more than 1,000 a day who are getting away with it. That's my guess. But that's supposedly a more sober approach to border security. According to, listen to this name from the Washington Compost, a writer, Ishan Tharoor. Ishan Tharoor. He might be a singer for the Psalters, whose ethnic music that you heard on my show. But except that he might not be a Christian. Definitely not an honest person. If he's pretending that this is crude nationalism and a less sober approach to border security. Give me a break. Ishaan Tharoor, Tharoor. Doesn't sound like a normal American. That's that. Anyway. By the way, speaking of this fake victimhood, let me just explain to you guys, which most of you probably already know, that the 3/5 compromise from way back in the 18-somethings, in other words, approaching 100 years ago, or more, maybe less, the 3/5 compromise did not say that blacks are only 3/5 human. It said slaves only count as 3/5 of your citizenry. because the slaves should not be part of your influence. Such a big part of your outsized part of your influence on the country. It was a power struggle between the North and the South. Maybe between Republicans and Democrats, and who knows what either of those groups were like. Because today, they are so different today from what they were 20 years ago. They were still pretty bad 20 years ago. And even very different from what they were 20 years before that. And they were still pretty bad 20 years before that. But stuff changes. Stuff does change. And parties change. Earl is less than 3/5, says Colin Barrett. Colin Barrett said it, Earl. Maybe 3/5 of a brain. Excuse me. Anyway, here's another Washington Compost headline. GOP state lawmakers says the 3/5 compromise was actually good. So that's a headline from the Washington Compost. And that's a pretense that the Republicans are racist stuff, right? In the course of arguing against teaching about so-called systemic racism in schools, which doesn't exist, right? Racism, period, doesn't exist, and especially systemic racism does not exist, right? Some GOP lawmakers, and never did, some GOP lawmakers suggest the original constitutional sin was somehow anti-slavery. And this is by Aaron Blake, which sounds like an American name. And I see this tweet from Cernovich, Mike Cernovich. He's like a liberal independent guy, journalist / activist on Twitter. He's been on the Jesse Lee Peterson show, spoken at a men's conference before. He said, slave states wanted to count every slave as a citizen, as this would inflate their population. Well, it would count their whole population, really, and give them more power, more representatives in the House of Representatives. The 3/5 compromise stopped the South from counting every slave as a part of their citizenry, right? It was the anti-slave forces who wanted the 3/5 compromise. And they're quoting, and he screenshotted some guy who said, Republican Representative Justin Lafferty just said on the Tennessee House floor that the 3/5 compromise was good. Republicans applauded. That was out, that's a day old or so. And they're pretending, oh, the 3/5 compromise meant I was only 3/5 of a human. No, it was for power. Duh. Did you want to be counted so that the slave masters, would you rather have been counted dummies if you had even been alive? Dummies? Talking about the ADOSs, the so-called African descendants of slaves. Would you rather have been counted so that the Democrats who owned you would have had even more power? I would be okay with that. Maybe the South was right on some things. It seems like they were. States' rights, for one. 3/5 is generous, to be honest. It was 100 years ago. Stop obsessing. I agree. And honestly, the stuff going on today, they don't want to look at the stuff going on today because they're the ones perpetrating the evil. Isn't that so interesting? They support lies. They support murder. They support self-destruction of blacks, of gays. ADOS cringe. African descendants of slaves. Go back to Africa if you're going to call yourself African. Go away. You don't belong here. It's so ridiculous. So, thank you for somebody setting this record straight over in Tennessee. Lafferty. Very good, man. Very good. I appreciate it. But the Republicans in general, they're so weak. They're not to be trusted. And even the state ones, the ones in the states. Remember the election We saw the people in Alabama, the state representatives in Alabama, pretending like we really want election integrity, but they weren't really willing to do anything to say, hey, hold on, wait a minute. Hey, now, hold on, wait a minute. And so we don't really know the truth about what happened. Some of you guys may think that you know the truth, but nobody knows the truth. Some people will say, Trump lied. It's the big lie. Because Trump said that the election was blank, which I cannot repeat on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, because they are anti-freedom, anti-truth, anti-getting to the bottom of really what happened. Here's another Washington Compost thing. It's Jeff Bezos's blog, if you will. Jeff Bezos, the Amazon guy, who got divorced a couple years ago from a woman who wouldn't even take his last name. Scott was her last name, was it? Something. And he's all strong. Outwardly. Fake strength, I guess. The effort to dump Liz Cheney is the consequence of a party that has lost its way, says this guy named Dan Balz. B-A-L-Z. Or Baltz? Liz Cheney is the daughter of Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was the vice president under George W. Bush. Or was he really running the show? Who knows? Dick Cheney, did he get shot while the George W. Bush was president? Or did he shoot somebody? He shot somebody. What a mess. They shot a lot of people. I voted for George W. Bush twice. I'm guilty. Guilty. But anyway, Liz Cheney, her sister is a lesbian, and Dick Cheney proudly touted his daughter as a lesbian. He said that. And he was for this so-called same-sex marriage thing, I think. Can you believe that? And so he differed with George W. Bush. But where's George W. Bush now on this so-called same-sex marriage thing? He's not for it. I mean, I haven't heard a peep. That coward was too cowardly to even criticize Barack Obama because he had this is George W. Bush, right? He had fake class. Oh, I want to withhold my criticism of my successor. But he didn't withhold his criticism of Trump, did he? Doesn't seem like he did. What a sleazy backstabber. Because Obama, under Bush, we had something called DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act. DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act. Marriage is between a man and a woman. That was under George W. Bush, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, people. Some of you guys may know your history better than me. This was like dating back to when I was... Hake voted for a liar twice. And it's spelled L-I-A-R, not L-I-E-R, Farsights. I didn't know George W. Bush to be a liar back then. I did not know him to be a liar. What did he lie about, other than being a Republican? He unmasked himself to me. Some of you guys saw right through him, but I didn't until he started cozying up to his big mama, Michelle Obama. George W. Bush, cozying up to Michelle Obama like a little boy with his nanny. Gross. DOMA. Defense of Marriage Act. Obama didn't enforce it. He didn't enforce the law. The Defense of Marriage Act. All these states started passing this fake same-sex marriage stuff, starting with Massachusetts, the far left enemies of America, Massachusetts, from which sleazy Mitt Romney hailed. He hails. And George W. Bush did not criticize Obama for not defending marriage, which was a law, Defense of Marriage Act. He was a beta president, says Colin Barrett. Very true. And they're saying, for now, Trump has won the battle for the soul of the GOP. Dissenters to his big lie are not welcome. That's the Washington Compost for you. I have a little bit more about that coming up. They're blaming Marjorie Taylor Green, It should be just Marjorie Green, I think, for Liz Cheney surviving this long, because she comes off, or she's portrayed, I think falsely a little bit, as a nutcase when they're more nutty than she is. They're nuttier than she is. Bush lied about WMD's Hake. Did he? Are you sure? Because that was that his lie? Or was that a lie put forth by the so-called intelligence community? From what I understand, many people were saying that this was WMD's. I don't think that that was something Bush just willy-nilly came up with. I don't think that the so-called deep state would have let it slide if Bush was the only one who came up with it. So double check yourself on that. Double check yourself on that. Was he in on the lie? Maybe. But to say that he came up with that lie, I know you're not saying that he came up with it, but did he knowingly lie? I don't know. Anyway, guys, this is more. We're at the top. We're just past the top of the hour for the second hour. You can call in 888-775-3773, but I have more Psalters for you, and I think that you'll like this song. Maybe not as much as Dumpster Divers, which I played for you, the live version yesterday, with the fancy, bouncy harmonica and banjo. But I think you might like this song. It's called Dig It Up by Psalters. Enjoy, and I'll be back in a few for the rest of hour 2. And we're back. Hake done gone fake Tom Waits, says Du White. Wow. I was asking some people experienced problems with the volume, like it went too low for some. Apologies for that. Not really sure what happened. I'm feeling a hankering for picking tomatoes, says Jim Justice. He's singing about Jesus, so I can't say anything bad about it, says Mr. Sandman. Thank you. This is someone trying to sound like Tom Waits. Whatever, man. Whatever. Hake was taken hostage. I like this song, asks Susan Steffens. Yeah, thank you. Hake is the new Andy Kaufman. Who's that? Not familiar. This song is from the soundtrack of Roots, says Skip McBurney. No, that's Psalters. It's not Tom Waits. It's Psalters. Devil music. Well, it is kind of anti-Wall Street music. That was from actually before the so-called recession. Remember the so-called economic recession that we experienced in 2007, 2008? This song makes me want to go out and buy a slave, says Skip McBurney. Wow. Tom Waits ruined singing like a grumbly old frogman for everyone else. I mean, that's the guy's voice. Anyway. It's talking about Jesus coming to free us. And there goes Wall Street crashing at his feet. Wow. But they have a point. If you think about the huge corporations, the biggest ones, enemies of America themselves. They're not for freedom of speech. They're anti-white people, anti-men, anti-Christian, pro-LGBTIQ madness, pro-Black Lives Matter madness, pro-everything self-destruction of the people, like I just told you. Enjoyed the song, says Bible Go-To Guy. Thank you, man. Faithful friend. It reminded me of that song in the movie Glory when they're sitting around the fire clapping. Don't know if I watched that movie yet. I was very sheltered. Before I get back to calls, you know how they're going after Marjorie Taylor Greene? MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is the Republican who has introduced repeatedly, I think, articles of impeachment against Joe Biden and trying to work on behalf of the people, right? Or at least putting on a show for it. She was elected out of, I forget where. She's a congressman, a female congressman, Republican. Georgia, thank you. Better man than most of the males over there, honestly. But still, it's kind of cringy. I heard that she said something along the lines of Western civilization and Anglo-Saxon law and stuff like that. She mentioned Anglo-Saxon something. And they went after her, and she backed down and then tried to fight again, and it was just a big mess. Confusion. Because men are solid. Women, it's harder to find a solid woman. The Bible says, as I was searching and not finding, I found one man among 1,000, and not one woman among them all. So it's hard to find one man, one honest man who's solid. Glory was hardcore North Civil War narrative, says Den Tietjen. How do you pronounce your last name? Or that name at the end of your name, Den Tietjen. I could easily believe that, though. There is a whole lot of propaganda with winners and losers, with wars, and with news stories to this day. That's what proves to me that you can't really trust history, because you can't trust present-day news. They don't tell you the truth about stuff that happened right before your eyes. To this day. Oops, I said it right over the I said it right over the drop.
To this day.
Thank you, whatever your name is. I'm forgetting. Black boxer guy who lost to the Irishman. Isn't he an American? He's an American boxer.
Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, Deontay Wilder is an American boxer, and he got beaten by that guy who turned fat and then he got fit. The Irishman, the Irish traveler, the Irish gypsy, the pikey, as some might call him. Is that hate speech to call them pikeys? I heard that that's offensive. WASP equals white alto saxophone player. Did I play alto saxophone? I might have played alto saxophone when I was in 7th and 8th grade. Yeah, Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury. He seemed like an okay guy, but then I heard that he came out in support of Black Lives Matter. Should that be par for the course, these people who make it into the public eye like that? They can't have a spine anymore? I don't know. He had some good comments before that. But anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene might have helped Liz Cheney survive this long, per the Washington Compost, because if they didn't strip her of her committee assignments, then they're going to have a harder time getting rid of Liz Cheney, because in their minds, the rhinos' minds, and the establishment's mind, the lady who's at least putting on a show of trying to fight for us, for we the people, provide us at least some representation in the government, of which we have zero representation now, except for Justice Thomas, although he's not a representative, he's a judge. He's an honest justice. If they don't get rid of her, how are they going to get rid of this rhino, Liz Cheney, who belongs in the Democrat Party, or actually belongs in Cuba or something? Whoa. I'm not even going to read that. Farsight's likes to undermine me. He says, Hake looks like I said I wasn't going to read it, now I'm going to read it. Hake looks like he played the clarinet in the marching band. Forget you, Farsights. Whatever. I do not look like that. That's Satan talking to you. Anyway, Trump put out a memo about this Liz Cheney woman, daughter of Dick Cheney, who supported same-sex marriage before even Joe Biden and Barack Obama did, outwardly anyway, because he's less dishonest than they are, I guess. Trump put out a memo about this Liz Cheney woman because he has his own thing that he's putting out, so-called tweets. You can look it up. It's called From the Desk of Donald J. Trump. So it's kind of like memos that Trump puts out, kind of like tweets. Stretching a little bit. Yeah, look. He put out a May 5th, 2021, President Trump endorses Representative Elise Stefanik for House GOP conference chair. Man, he's always promoting these women. Anyway, he says he put out multiple, whatever you want to call these, memos or tweets or whatever, about this woman, Liz Cheney, who is endlessly smearing President Trump. May 3rd, he tweeted, or he put out from his desk, heartwarming to read new polls on big shot warmonger Liz Cheney of the great state of Wyoming. She's so low that her only chance would be if vast numbers of people run against her, which hopefully won't happen. They never liked her much. But I say she'll never run in a Wyoming election again. Then he goes on, May 5th, just today. He put out multiple statements about her today. Memos, I'll call them. Warmonger Liz Cheney, who has virtually no support left in the great state of Wyoming, continues to knowingly and foolishly say there was no election, and I have to censor this. I have to censor my own real president. Shenanigans. No election shenanigans. That's not the word that he used, but he used the F word that it's a good word. It's not a cuss word, but it has to be censored by the liberals. No election shenanigans in the 2020 presidential election, when in fact the evidence, including no legislative approvals as demanded by the U.S. Constitution, because the state legislatures are the ones who are supposed to control the elections, shows the exact opposite. Had Mike Pence referred the information on 6 states, only need 2, back to the state legislatures, and had gutless and clueless minority leader Mitch McConnell, he blew 2 seats in Georgia that should never have been lost, fought to expose all of the corruption that was presented at the time, which more found since, we would have had a far different presidential result, and our country would not be turning into a socialist nightmare. Never give up, he says. Isn't that nice advice? Never give up. Right on, President Trump. And he memoed again. I keep on wanting to call it tweet. The F word that I can't say is fraud. I can't say fraud. Okay, so he was talking about election shenanigans. Liz Cheney is a warmongering fool who has no business in the Republican Party leadership, Trump said. We want leaders who believe in the Make America Great Again movement and prioritize the values of America first. America first. I feel like stealing Jesse's toy Trump that says America first. And then he goes, Elise Stefanik, that woman, he says, it's a far superior choice. Well, I mean, if it has to be a woman, yes, Elise Stefanik is a far superior choice. And she has my complete and total endorsement, Trump says. For GOP conference chair, Elise is a tough and smart communicator. Yeah, that's true, but don't be picking women all the time, Trump. But anyway, good for him. So this is his outlet, his new social media, if you will, outlet on which he can put out statements. And it's kind of fun. May 5th, he memoed out what Facebook, Twitter, and Google have done is a total disgrace and an embarrassment to our country. And that's true. With this censorship stuff, free speech has been taken away from the President of the United States because the radical left lunatics are afraid of the truth. But the truth will come out anyway, bigger and stronger than ever before, Trump said. That's nice. Always positive, Trump. I like it. The people of our country will not stand for it. These corrupt social media companies must pay a political price and must never again be allowed to destroy and decimate our electoral process. Nice. I like it. I like it. Matt Living the Dream says, Trump hired the people that he needed and had to fight against. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. You know, these people that he hired, many of them, maybe not Kushner, maybe not Jared Kushner. I don't know if he really fought with Jared Kushner. He actually went along with his suggestions, which some of them I wouldn't have agreed with, right? But some of these people that he hired, he did have to fight with them. Backstabbers. It's kind of like saying Jesus hired Judas Iscariot to control the money. And he would sometimes help himself to some, I think. And then he turned on him. Turned on Jesus. What is Trump's website called? It's called donaldjtrump.com/desk. You cannot reply to it currently, I don't think. And you cannot even, from what I can tell, you can't even, when you click on the heart, it doesn't do anything. The heart to like it. You can share it on Facebook, I guess. Or Twitter. From what I understand, from what it looks like. At least currently. Yeah, I mean, look at how it's hard to find good help. And look at what else that Trump had to do with his appointments. He had to make them politically palatable, which means weak for the most part. Because who had to approve them? The Senate. And the Senate upheld some of his approvals, by the way. It took forever. But he did not control the whole government, FYI. He did not control the whole government. He definitely didn't control the deep state, which is the permanent employees. The permanent employees, you can only fire so many of them. because they're the unions. They are protected by unions. Did you know that? Government unions. It's sick. And then look at the Senate. The Senate only approves the most soft, weak, cowardly people if they're Republicans. They don't approve men. Barr was the worst, says Colin Barrett. Bill Barr. I don't know if he was the worst or not, but, you know, people turn out to be not what you think. Anyway, the Senate, I'm talking about what's approved by the Senate. What's approved by the Senate is the weak people. We, the people, voted in Trump. That didn't require Senate approval. Just a side note. Just a side note. So don't be all, his party had control of the three branches. Not true. Not true. Because that's not his party. The Senate was controlled by rhinos. And the House was controlled by rhinos. They got rid of that guy from the committee. I think when the Republicans were still in control of the House of Representatives, the Republicans censured and stripped of his committee assignments our great Iowa congressman, Republican Steve King. That shows you that that's not Trump's party controlling the three branches. Much less the judicial branch. Did not control that either. You know, the Senate had to approve those judges, those justices. He couldn't appoint a based justice or judge. They had to be approved by the Senate and approved by these things. Anyway. The Senate is for the corporation. Exactly. That's right, Matt living the dream. So I'm defending Trump on that stuff. To a point, you know, to a point. You don't know what it's like to be the guy behind blue eyes. Does Trump have blue eyes? Anyway, let me get to Robert in Kansas. He wants to talk about the WMDs, the weapons of mass destruction, and the Civil War. Two wars, major wars. What's up, Robert? How are you?
Hey, Hake, I don't even know anymore, man. You're talking about lots of stuff there. I just wanted to, the thing about the Civil War, I feel like you're baiting me or, you know, maybe you don't think about me at all, Hake, but you've had other calls about the Civil War, and I've tried to come on and talk to what?
Yeah, go on.
I'm going to try. I've come to here and talk to this event before. But I want to break it down maybe into simpler language because when I say, you know, international banking, I think people start to, you know, they don't really know how to handle like that information and never been taught about banking and how it works.
Right.
But
yeah.
Think of it like this. Think of them not as bankers, but as gangsters. So like international gangsters.
Okay.
And America had its own thing going over here, right? Whether we had black slaves or white slaves or whatever, you had a bunch of rich plantations, a bunch of rich people. Now, if you're a gangster, Hake, you go and you put a gun in someone's face and you take their stuff. You're a gangster. Right?
Okay.
Well, if you're an international gangster, you play at a real high level. And who do you want to rob? Do you want to rob some poor black living out in a barn somewhere?
Right.
Or do you want to rob the plantation owner?
Yeah. Makes sense.
You want to rob the plantation owner. You want to rob the people who have the money, okay? And so that's what the Civil War was. The Revolutionary War, if you think about it, they tried to tax our tea. Now, you could use the tea tax as a metaphor for anything. They tried to tax us. That's
right.
what banking is. What modern banking is they loan your government money, and your government taxes you to pay them back. That's modern banking, right? So
okay.
In the Revolutionary War, we had a republic after that where you had human rights. You couldn't have taxes applied to your labor, to your land, or anything. You actually owned what your land and labor and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, if you're an international gangster, you don't like free men to own their stuff. You want to be able to tax them, enslave them. So what the Civil War was the international gangsters coming back in to tax your land and your labor, and every man's land and labor, whether you're white, you're black or you're purple or whatever, you're going to be taxed, which is the modern form of slavery. That's what the Civil War was about. The bankers coming back in and creating a system where they loan our government money, our government taxes us to pay them back. And that's why we turned into a corporation. Matt Living a Dream said they're for the corporation. Well, the corporation in 1871, we were made into a corporation. A corporation owns stock. See, a constitutional republic has living men and land and soil and all this stuff. A corporation has stock, livestock. And livestock don't have any rights. They can be taxed and used and sold however. And that's what me and you are. We're livestock, right? We can be taxed because this is a corporation, right? That's what it was about. It was bringing in the Babylonian corporate fiction. That's what it's called because it's been around since Babylon. And you have to have the corporate fiction in order to apply money magic or fiat debt-based money systems where you can create money out of nothing. And so that's what this is. These are a bunch of gangsters that are able to tax everybody all the time. They use this example of black slavery as just a cover so that you don't know the real history. And so everyone's focused on some black people. These people do not care about black people, guys.
Right.
They don't like black people at all, but they will point you towards that all day long. So you never figure out who actually runs this place and who actually controls things.
Interesting.
It's all about the Benjamins, baby. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that lesson.
And the WMDs in Iraq, Hake, I'm an Iraq multi-tour combat vet of the Iraq theater.
I know.
And I learned a lot about that situation. And what Saddam started doing is the same thing that applied to the Civil War. He started selling oil for euros. He started trading. He gave oil to Europe for euros instead of using U.S. dollars. Well, in the Bretton Woods Agreement, the way that our money system is set up, you have to use dollars to buy oil.
I've heard that before. I've heard that before, yeah.
And so that's the petrodollar. That's our modern monetary system, and that's how it's all set up. And the Civil War was basically these people taking back over America to establish this whole thing we have now that went over there and destroyed Iraq. Also, the same exact group of people who are the international gangsters, okay? They wear
different generation.
Oh yeah, it's generational because it's mammon. It's Satan, really. It's Mammonite. When you look on the back of the money, it says, "In God we trust."
Interesting,
now,
man.
They're not talking about the Creator. They're talking about Satan, and Satan doesn't die. You can't kill him. So he is multi-generational, and he's here, and he's running this whole show, and it's up to me and you, Hake, to beat him back.
I appreciate that, Robert. I had never thought about those wars in that context. People are talking about, I know that people said, oh, we went to Iraq for the oil, but I never really understood that stuff.
Yes,
that's cool, man. Appreciate that.
To control the oil, to control the energy of the world.
The money.
Energy is everything, Hake. If you control the energy, you control food production, everything.
Yeah.
So it's the real history of the world that
but wasn't Trump
not taught about?
Wasn't Trump right? If we were in Iraq, we should have kept the oil. Trump made that point.
Well, Hake, I don't necessarily. I didn't call to get into you about Trump. But
he makes some interesting points. You can tell.
God bless Trump and God bless Biden. That's what I got to say.
Okay. Well, thank you, Robert. Appreciate it, man. Good to hear from you.
All right, brother. Hey, shout out to the chat. Love you guys, and you guys are doing great. Hey, great show, man.
Thank you, man.
Chris too. Shout out to Chris and Nick. All right.
Yes, sir.
Bye.
All right. Very interesting. And why didn't we stay and win? Why didn't we actually? We aren't winning wars anymore. We just stay there and bleed out and then tie the hands of our soldiers like we tie the hands of the cops. When Trump is a joke, says Danny. Man, I know a lot of you guys think that. Anyway, shout out Jib Jab over on, before I get to Bobby, I got to read a couple super chats. Jib Jab over on Streamlabs. You can support through streamlabs.com/The Hake Report. Says, what do you think about the quota system police use? And do you think it should be abolished? Curious on your thoughts about it. I'm not familiar with which quota system or what quota system the police have, but I have heard that sometimes they're supposed to get such and such number of tickets, give this number of tickets so that you can bring revenue in and stuff like that, or stop this number of people or stuff like that. I think that's silly. I think it's silly. Misguided. There's a whole lot of misguided ways to address problems. A lot of times cities are hurting for money, and so they'll impose this or that fine, parking tickets, all kinds of petty fines and things in order to get more money. Cigarette taxes. It's a bit of a catch-22, yeah. Because you kind of, because there are so many criminals, we have such a corrupt society, I guess you kind of need the cops. Didn't used to need them as much. Really, truly didn't. We had men in the days of what was called extrajudicial punishments, sometimes in present day called street justice. The men of the area, and sometimes they were males, they were not actually men, would execute justice, or their version of justice. Sometimes they would hold their own makeshift trial, or sometimes they wouldn't even really have proof. Some people would be innocent, falsely accused, and there would be lynch mobs, right? But some of the lynch mobs were targeted towards people who were actually guilty. Some of them, I assume, towards those who were actually innocent. And we had, in short, it was men looking out for the community. Because men were doing that, executing the justice. And there were black men who were lynching other blacks. Did you know that? Blacks lynching other blacks. And it was for purported crimes. Alleged crimes. But that was men who took a responsibility for their community. Whether they were right or wrong, they were taking responsibility for their community. We don't have that right now. We don't have men looking out for their community. They pull out their cell phone. At best. I remember when I was growing up, there would be like, if a fight was starting, one of the guys who was like a good guy in my class, I considered him like a good guy, he would go, hey, break it up, and he would jump in and break up the fight. And you could argue whether the fight is justified or not, right? But he would actually step in. Many times, people won't break up a fight. They'll gather around and watch. But that young man, boy at the time, took responsibility and broke up the fight. That's kind of rare nowadays. Don't you notice that? So I don't know. I don't like the quota system. I like to have actual justice, not this forced. And I don't know if you're talking about maybe like racial quotas and all that. Probably you're not talking about that because you probably know that I'm not into racial quotas. So thank you, Jib Jab. I'm not sure. Let me get to Bobby in Texas. Bobby wants to talk about George Bush. George W. Bush or George Bush the daddy? Bobby in Texas, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, James. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well as well. Thank you.
Well, Robert, always one of my favorite callers, but he kind of covered some of my points there on the Bushes. I was going to talk about how the
stay out the
Iraq
bushes
war. But yeah, it was all, and it was what you mentioned about keeping the oil. It was a little different in Iraq. It was like we were going for like on lies, to give saving their oil and not taking their oil. Like we were using it as a cover for keeping the U.S. dollar strong. So we wanted to like keep the oil on that. So if we took the oil, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Oh,
But where Trump went into Syria and did take the oil,
nice.
it was different. It was like they were liberating, the whatever war that is, the civil war they were having in Syria. So it wasn't quite the same thing as what was going on in Iraq at the time.
Isn't it remarkable that Trump, he seems to truly think quite independently for a boomer and for a human being, period. He comes up with stuff that nobody else is saying, at least not in the mainstream. And I like hearing that from him sometimes. When they went after I'm sorry to go on this tangent, but I will let you talk. When he went on that about the Johnson & Johnson thing being suspended for the blood clots happening, right? Johnson & Johnson's vaccine was suspended. I think that was political. That was done for political reasons, to pay Pfizer back for colluding with the government against me to undermine my election, right? Because Pfizer had good news that they withheld before the election, long before the election took place. And they withheld it until after the election because they didn't want to help the president. Just an interesting point. He came up with that, and I hadn't heard anybody else say that. And many other things.
I've always thought Trump. It was one of the reasons that I liked Trump, is that he was different than any politician that I've ever experienced in my lifetime.
Yeah.
All the rest have been the same old thing. It was just elections were, the same no matter which way you voted. You got
right.
the same result.
Yeah. So tiring.
And I always felt that. Yeah, I always felt that way. I always felt that I would get the same thing no matter which guy I voted for until Trump. Trump was the first one that made me feel like, well, I might actually, I'm going to get something that I actually asked for. I might get what I'm actually voting for with this guy.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, I thought I got everything I wanted out of Trump the first time.
Cool.
Like I wasn't expecting so much when I voted the first time. I would have liked to have seen what happened the next time around.
Yeah.
We saw how that turned out. Maybe we'll get another shot in 2024.
We'll see. We shall see. So I interrupted you about Bush and stuff.
Yeah, well, I was going to say also Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like I'm kind of along with you and Jesse. Like I don't like to support any woman in a position of power, but I like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think she stands up for what's right. I think she fights the good fight. I like who she is as a person. It seems like she's pretty based and for what's right.
Yeah, that's cool.
I have her back. I think she's pretty cool. I don't like very many politicians, I'll say that, but I think she's pretty cool and pretty, at least willing to fight for what's right and at least, put a target on her back for it.
Yeah, you know what? This takes me on another tangent. The mainstream media and just the portrayal of people in the public eye generally by whoever it is, they are really good at smearing people, because they had me convinced that she was a nutcase. I thought that she was just a nutcase. I thought that she was into the Q thing and all of that, when it turned out that was all kind of behind her. She wasn't as nutty she's not even as nutty as they are. Maybe she falls a little bit for some of that stuff, just a tiny bit, maybe beyond what you know to be true. But no, she is pretty much more sane than they portrayed her. And they did the same. And I know better, right? I know better than to fall for the mainstream media's stuff or portrayal in the social media and stuff. I know better than to fall for that. But I fell for it, even recently. And I fell, for the smears against Joe Arpaio at one point, until I heard him on the Jesse Lee Peterson show. I'm like, wait a minute, this guy's a man looking out for the country. Joe Arpaio was, or is.
They're so good at putting it on so many different angles. So many people talking about it that it comes off as, well, maybe. God.
Right.
There's so many people saying it. They even have, conservative pundits talking, and you're like, oh, man, maybe she is crazy. But I don't think anything she ever really said was all that crazy that I'd heard her say.
Yeah, and I think you're right.
I don't sit there and just track every word she says.
Exactly.
I'm not in Georgia, so what they do really doesn't affect me all that much. But, she does fight for, the two genders, which, more people should stand up for that. And
I know. It's such a
she's
low bar.
been on board. Yeah, exactly. It's true. It is a low bar. But I think, just like that, like I said, I would never vote for a woman. Like, I went out of my way to not vote for a lady for mayor in my city. But,
yeah,
it's just, even though the one that was running seemed like she was on pace, I'd rather have the guy that was running under basically the same kind of platform.
Right. I agree. Well, thank you,
That's
Bobby.
yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think that covers it. I might have had. Oh yeah, the song you played when I was calling in. I called in. Did sound a lot like Tom Waits. I was like, this is pretty good.
I like Tom Waits. He's the guy who did Closing Time, right? That song Closing Time. That's true. But his voice has a slightly different quality to it because his is more relaxed.
He uses what's called I believe it's a bullet microphone to give his voice kind of that gravelly sound.
Okay.
But yeah, he does have kind of a rougher voice. I like him. They did the song from that, I think it was The Bug's Life or something like that. One of those movies, animated bug movies.
That's
Deep
interesting.
Down in a Hole or something like that. Yeah, I always thought that was cool. I like that song. That's pretty good.
I think the song is Closing Time by Tom Waits. Or maybe I'm thinking of somebody else.
Like there's the bar song where they, Down in a Hole song is like the only one I can really think of that's mainstream. Really.
Oh, you know what? I was thinking Leonard Cohen. Closing Time by Leonard Cohen is a good song. But he has an album called Closing Time, Tom Waits, that I have. Anyway.
Yeah.
Cool,
right,
man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Bobby. Good to hear from you.
Later, man.
All right. Yeah, Matt Living the Dream says Trump rolled over. He had the whole government in his party. The first 2 years, he hired rhinos and fired the ones that got him there. Fools! Yeah, I remember the great General Flynn, Michael Flynn. Everything I know about him, he seems like a decent guy. And never turned his back on Trump even after he had to resign from the smear job that they did on him. They set him up. Take Care Business Bear clarifies the question about, from Jib Jab about quotas. Cops qualify for federal money and state money when they reach a quota. That's a Take Care Business Bear. That's such a scam. The federal money and the state money, they hang it over the state's heads and the local people's heads in order to control them. It's such a scam. It's so evil. And the feds and the state so-called authorities that they do this to, that do this, they're not based on what's right. I was talking to a man about education. These schools can buy textbooks, right? But these textbooks have to be approved. School districts can buy textbooks, right, for the students. But these textbooks have to be approved through standards for some states. Many states have these adopt standards. And in some of the standards, it has to have diversity and reference to this or that, blacks, gay representation probably now, no doubt, including math books. Math books. I'm telling you, I'm serious. Because math books, these textbooks, they present like, okay, here's a problem. This homosexual went to the store and did this and this and that. And this name that's a foreign-sounding name, but this is America, but it's a foreign-sounding name because everybody's different, and we need diversity, and you need to not be bigoted, white students. They adopt these ridiculous standards, and then the textbook makers have to rearrange their books and put in stuff and take out stuff that get rid of decency and straightforwardness in the education system. And what I heard from this man that I was talking to was that the states that don't adopt these standards, they do better. The test scores are much better. That means because locals have control. And I remember this man was telling me, he was talking to back when Republicans were running the state of California, like 20, 5 years ago, maybe. And this Republican woman stood up and said, well, we don't trust the locals to make the right decision. They want power, localized power, not localized power, centralized power. And what do the parents have to do? They can't go to the state and say, hey, fix this. The parents want local control so they can confront the people who are making the bad decisions. But no. The states and federal government and now the UN want to get involved in this fake education and corrupt education and lower the quality of the education. What a mess. And that's what's happening. Homeschool or die, says Misty Loca. It's true. And Trump was different. He was for local. He was for school choice. Parents having school vouchers, right? A lot of the blacks who are not dumb, they want school vouchers. But Obama got rid of it. And by the way, one good thing too, before we had the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, was the teacher unions had to spread out their resources and their energy to fight all the different states and local school districts or state education departments amongst the 50 states or districts if the states didn't try to meddle with their micromanaging fingers into the locals. So these teachers unions were not as powerful because they had to spend their resources on everything. Teachers unions are communists, right? They're Democrat supporters. They hate what's right. Teachers unions, corrupt. And once we established a federal Department of Education, the teachers unions focused all their energy on one thing, the Federal Department of Education. So they became that much more powerful. Corrupt. See, what a shame. That's what globalism does. Same thing as that nationalizing education, nationalizing healthcare. That's not the right kind of nationalism. Just FYI. Just a side note. Let me get to first-time caller John in Kentucky. He wants to respond about the Civil War to Robert, I believe. John in Kentucky, how are you doing? Thanks for holding. Are you there? John, come on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are. Were you on mute? You had me on mute?
Yeah, I was on mute.
Okay.
I pressed the microphone, yeah.
Nice.
All right, so look, this is what I want to say. I'm a black man, so, I'm not going to agree with most of the stuff you got on your show.
All right.
But that
You're
last
black, so you won't agree with the truth?
No, it's not the truth. It's not the truth.
Yeah, it is.
It's only the
What's not the
from your
truth?
viewpoint. Well, okay, let me get it out, man. But he was talking about the
Because you
Civil War,
said,
the truth.
I'm black, so I'm not going to agree with what's on your show.
Right.
Interesting.
So
Interesting
all I
way to
wanted
put
to
it.
say was the truth that he was saying about the Civil War, which is true, but from your standpoint, because my standpoint, he was only explaining to me how evil white people are in general, because they didn't give a damn about putting somebody in slavery. They just cared about the money the same way they do today. They don't really care about black people, whether you're good or bad.
Do you think blacks
And
are any
also,
different in their love of money?
No, black people love money, but they don't discriminate on color like white people.
Oh, yes, you do. What the heck?
No,
You discriminate on color more than anybody. Blacks do.
No, that's not true.
Yes, it is.
That's not true.
Yes, it
but
is.
Anyway, look. My point is, oh my God.
Calm down, John. Calm down, John. I'll let you talk. I'll let you talk.
Go ahead.
My point is, you said you're showing to me how evil white people are in their love of money. They don't care about blacks. But that's how human nature is. They love money. They don't care about one another.
Okay, no.
That includes you.
I mean,
that includes you. That includes blacks.
It slightly varies from race to race. White people are the most evil people on this planet.
Okay.
All you have to do is look at their history as a whole.
But you don't know history.
I'm about to give you some history if you let me talk. But
let me interrupt because you don't know history, because you don't even know that what we're being.
I know some history.
But we don't. But my point is, we don't even know what the present day news really is, because they're not honest about the present day news.
Right.
So how can you trust the history that
agree.
you're told?
because the history is in your white American history books from not today, but years ago. So if you let me get to it, I'll explain.
Go ahead.
All right, so I hear y'all talking about the children of the lie all the time, and Satan is your daddy.
Yeah.
Well, the first 12 presidents owned slaves, so those people aren't actually American heroes. Those were actually children of the lie, and Satan was their daddy, because no one would do that to another human being that had, nobody has to be a slave.
How do you know?
First 12. So
why does nobody have to be a slave?
I said nobody asked to be a slave because it's brutal. It's brutal.
Not necessarily.
Right? Chattel slavery, the slavery that my people went through. I'm not talking about
define chattel slavery. Define chattel slavery.
Chattel slavery is almost like you're a cow or some type of farm equipment. That's what chattel slavery is.
And so by chattel slavery, the slave owners worked.
Don't interrupt that much with your white guest. Well, go ahead.
The slave owners worked. Well, I mean, I just kind of let Robert talk because I don't have any knowledge about what he's talking about. But
all right, well, go ahead.
Yeah, that's your imagination that I don't interrupt your white, my white thing.
Yeah, you do. You do.
No, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. But anyway,
you obviously don't. But go ahead.
You're saying that the slave owners worked the blacks like cattle, whereas the pharaohs, they worked the Israelites like human beings. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I don't think you know the history about the Israelites, so you may want to come away from that. We're talking about the first.
Are you an Israelite?
the founders. I am an Israelite. Yes.
Okay, cool.
But America was founded.
But no, those were decent men. Those first 10 presidents, you can't smear them just because they owned slaves.
Yes, you can.
No, you cannot.
They're children of the devil.
No, it's not.
Yes, God did not.
What if they were decent? What if they were decent slave masters?
You can't be decent slave masters.
Yes, you can.
You
learned the wrong history.
And I treat you nice.
If you treat me,
be my slave, and I treat you nice, and not give you money, just give you a little shack to sleep in.
If I had to be a slave, I'd rather you treat me nice.
You're not being honest. See, that's what I'm talking about. White people are inherently evil, because you can see you're not being honest.
Yes, I am. If I had to be a slave, listen to my answer.
People up for generations, man.
If there were happy slaves.
Listen, that makes absolutely no sense.
Yes, it does.
People dealt with what they had to deal with at the time.
Exactly.
They made the best out of what they had. But what I'm trying to tell you is, the people who owned the slaves, they didn't have to do it.
How do you know they didn't have to do it?
Because do you have to do it now?
We don't have to do it now because we are all
you didn't have to do it then.
Did you hear Robert's call? He said we are all slaves under the tax system. We're just more spoiled.
We're talking about chattel slavery, right?
No, we're talking about slavery in general. Your chattel slavery doesn't count as anything.
Yes, it does.
It's meaningless because you're pretending that we were dehumanizing you.
The people you call American heroes were actually evil people.
No, they weren't.
To their own, not to their own people.
Are you evil?
No, I'm not evil.
How are you not evil? You're judging men that you don't know. You only know one detail about them, and you're judging them based on it.
Yeah, and that one detail is some of the harsh stuff.
But just because they were slave masters doesn't mean that you know what they did. Being a slave master doesn't tell you what they did as a slave master.
I know you're evil and you want to defend slavery because if you could bring slavery back, you would.
Not true. Not true. I wouldn't want the trouble.
Yes, you would.
No, you guys are too much trouble.
You'd have the biggest smile on your face if slavery was back into play. You'd have the biggest smile on your face.
You don't have any idea what's in my mind.
And Jesse would be your number one slave. He would
probably be my slave master. He's like a slave driver.
He would. He definitely would.
So you just contradicted yourself.
And he'd do it with a smile on his face with some watermelon in his hand. That's what kind of black man he is.
He's a solid, honest black man.
But anyway, I just wanted to tell you how the foundation of America is hatred. And
it's hatred.
I like the way things. Listen. I like the way things are going now because y'all cry and whine every day about white people and how weak they are and they need to stand up.
Yeah.
It's like everything's going in reverse now. Even though black people are going crazy.
like evil befalling whites? You like evil befalling whites?
No, but I like the way y'all whine and cry about discrimination when all that stuff that took place back in the day when my parents were coming up y'all act like it didn't never exist at all. But since that was
but you're not.
tale,
But you're celebrating evil for evil, supposed evil that I don't know happened.
I have to be honest. It feels good to see y'all having to go through the same things that y'all's grandparents.
That's not a godly position. As an Israelite, you are a disgrace to your fake God.
It's not a God. It's not a. Well, you don't count because you're children of Esau, so you don't count. God doesn't love you.
Yeah,
but anyway,
he does.
No, he does not.
Yes, he does.
Does not care for you. Are you an Israelite?
Yes.
No, you're not.
I'm grafted in.
You're a Christian.
Christians are the heirs of Israel.
If you're grafted in, that means your position in heaven is going to be as a slave.
I'm adopted.
You're going to be a slave in heaven.
A slave of Christ.
Yes. Christ is a black man. He's not a white man. So
you don't know that.
Be a slave.
You don't know that.
The head is. I know that for a fact.
No, you don't.
All you have to do is look at the geography.
You don't have a very Christ-like attitude. Christ loved his enemies. You hate them.
Christ does not love his enemies.
Yes, he did.
He tells us to love our enemies. Christ hates his enemies.
No, you don't know what you're talking about, and you hate your enemies too.
You obviously don't know.
You don't even listen to Christ.
You're stuttering over there.
You don't even listen to Christ.
Listen, I don't listen.
Because he said, love your enemies, and you don't. You feel good that injustice is happening to whites.
Who's my enemy?
You hate whites.
Who's my enemy?
Whites, because you hate whites.
Who's your enemy?
Satan.
How can Satan be your enemy when you're a child of Satan?
I don't know where you're getting that from.
you defend slavery. You try to say George Washington.
I'm saying slavery.
And all these people are good people.
Hold on. I'm saying slavery. There were good and bad slave owners. There were dignified and undignified slave owners.
So are the good murderers also and good people who rape people? Are the good people who molest children?
Those things are different from slavery.
How? They're all in the same.
No, they're not.
They rape their slave women. That's how you get all
rape.
These
you're talking about rape. You're talking about rape now. You're not talking about slavery. You're talking about rape. That's different.
Listen, I said they rape their slaves.
I know. You're talking about rape. You're not talking about slavery. Rape is different from slavery.
That's the whole process of dehumanizing somebody when you're a slave.
But you dehumanize me. You don't even think that I'm human.
Well, you're sitting up here condoning slavery. You're not.
How long have you been an Israelite?
Do you know what being a human is really, though?
How long have you been an Israelite, John?
I was born an Israelite.
But how long have you considered yourself an Israelite?
Oh, just a few years.
Oh, okay. You were raised Christian?
But I didn't know. Yeah, I was raised Christian. Jesus was in the back of my mind as a white man, blonde hair, blue eyes. And when I found out...
That's funny, because I was never raised to believe that Jesus had blonde hair, blue eyes. So I think you're lying about that.
No, that's true.
I was never raised to believe that Jesus had blonde hair and blue eyes. But you guys harp on that stuff, and it's not even real.
You weren't raised alike. What's not real?
This whole narrative that, Jesus is presented as blonde-haired, blue-eyed. He's never presented as blonde-haired, blue-eyed. You guys are lying.
Look at all the pictures.
All the pictures show him with brown hair, brown eyes. All the pictures that I've seen.
That's a lie.
No, it's not. Nope, not lying.
You have Google. All you have to do is go to Google.
Google is evil.
Well, hey,
anyway,
either way you look at it, it's a false image of him. He is 100% not white whatsoever, not European whatsoever.
Why are you so into that? How old are you?
What do you mean?
How old are you?
I'm 30 years old, but what does that matter?
Because you're all into it. You're all into the black thing. It's silly. But anyways.
There's nothing wrong with being into the black thing because you're so into the white thing, right?
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not. Anyway,
come on, man.
John.
That's all you got to do on your show every day is bash black people, and then you want to.
But I'm only bashing the evil stuff that they do.
No, that's not true, man.
Yes, it is.
You could care less about black people. You could care less about.
Anyway, I got to run, John. We're at the end of the show.
That's what you're good at.
Thank you.
Running.
Yeah.
That's what you're good at. Yeah.
Thank you.
And look, I got one more question.
I got to end. Can you call me tomorrow?
I really don't. I don't know, man. I'll think about it.
All right.
But look, man, it was fun wearing you out on your show today.
Yeah.
I may have to call you once a week and wear you out.
Sounds good.
All right.
Take care, man.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Rick from Hampton, Virginia, and the rest of the callers. I cannot get to you. We are over time. This has been the Hake Report, thehakereport.com/show. Rebuildingtheman.com/church for the Sunday service throwback. Make sure you catch it, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Bond Rebuilding the Man YouTube channel, okay? Be there. And rebuildingtheman.com to find the men's conference tickets for men only. The next day, church for everybody over there in Orlando, Florida. Thanks, guys. Take care.
What?